some big news before we start talking about the artist, of course. Some big news this week. No more Julia and no more Sam in the commentary booth.
Yeah, huge surprise, I think, not just for us, but for all the Australian Eurovision fans. They were Eurovision Australia for the time being. These two people were so extremely popular, and of course Eurovision is popular and has been popular in Australia for, I think, about 30 years now. But the last couple of years, that popularity was so related and linked to Julia and Sam, and they were funny and at the same time knew a lot about the contestants. And yeah, it's a shame that they will stop now. I don't know what the exact reason for it is, but they will have to find new names, and it's going to be big shoes to fill.
Yeah, and it's interesting because some fans are already speculating. We have to acknowledge the fact that it's still speculation, but that it is a decision by SBS and not by Julia and Sam.
But then in that case, I would still wonder why they would make such a decision and what kind of reasons would be behind that. Because it's not that the viewing figures are disappointing in any way or that they need a new, refreshing something. Nobody expected this. Nobody saw an actual reason on the short term to make such a decision. So even if it is an SBS decision, that would be worth trying to find out what their reasons might be to do such a thing.
Tomorrow morning we'll get to know the third act ever that Australia has sent to Eurovision. What are your expectations?
Expectations for Australia always have to be high because we've only participated twice and reached the top 5 on both occasions. Sent, of course, a world superstar to the stage in Vienna with Guy Sebastian. Last year, were promised an even bigger name. Everybody was speculating who could be an even bigger name than Guy Sebastian. Turned out to be Dami Im, who, in my opinion, may not have been a bigger name than Guy Sebastian, but she did even better in the end result. With an amazing vocal performance. We on ESC Daily published on our website and on our Facebook page also the microphone only, so you hear only her voice, and then you hear even better what an amazing performance she gave and what an amazing vocalist she is. So looking at those two entries, expectations have to be high. This year, SBS has been much more quiet about what we can expect. Of course, last year they set the bar pretty high with their comments in advance, and then the initial announcement was a bit of a disappointment. So I think this year they want to be more quiet and focus on other things, like the news with the commentators that we've just discussed. So it makes it also very difficult to predict who it's going to be. Of course, we've speculated. We've had an editorial on our website looking into the big names, but I have no clue, to be honest, who it's going to be. But I'm confident that it will be a good entry again for Australia.
Well, I have a hunch that it could be someone with experience in a talent show or something like that, because I think that the experience with Dami Im really did them good in that sense. You know what I mean?
Yes, and the theory, of course, last year was that because we've heard Delta Goodrem was one of the potential names last year, and one of the theories that I've heard and that I find plausible is that she actually wanted to go, but her record label, Sony Music, who are of course have a very large influence on the Australian entry, that they said that it would be better and more beneficial for them to send a young talent to Eurovision. Their strategy is, after Guy Sebastian, of course, that sending a young name and a new name to Eurovision, someone who hasn't already conquered the European markets, in financial terms is more beneficial to them, and in that sense, a follow-up to Dami Im, especially since she also got a good result, would be a logical choice. Yeah.
One more throwback, because you were in Malta for the Junior Eurovision Song Contest, where you also discussed the fact that this is now the third time in a row that Australia gets to take part, and that eventually the European Broadcasting Union has to make a decision, a permanent decision.
Yes, and after a while, of course, we don't want to get too cocky and ask for too much as Australians in Eurovision, where I, as chief editor of ESC Daily, gladly count myself to. We don't want to ask for too much, but this is the third time. If it's every year going to be again and again on a one-time basis and on a year-by-year basis, after a while that gets really sad, because year and year after again, SBS has to prove that they are worth it or something like that. So after a while, this is the third time now, you get to wonder, is it maybe time to give Australia a permanent spot? Haven't we done enough by now? I would say yes. But Jon Ola, when I asked him about this in Malta, when I was in Valletta for the Junior Eurovision, they've all, of course, now also been in Junior Eurovision twice. I asked Jon Ola about that, and he said it's not just a decision for us to make, but for the reference group and for all the member participating countries. So every participating country should be on board with that decision. I don't know who could be against this. Of course, we know the UK is a big player in broadcaster terms. BBC is one of the biggest memberships in the EBU, and BBC is not a really big fan of Australia in Eurovision, as we've seen at their national final. I don't know if that's maybe a problem, but as far as I'm concerned, it would be about time that Australia was granted a bit more credit than they are now.